Hi everybody, and welcome to tonight's event, What It Takes to Make Better Career Decisions. This is the 10th and final talk in this year's What It Takes Alumni Speaker Series. So welcome. My name is Laura and I manage the Alumni Relations Office at the University of Westminster. We're the team that keep in touch with you once you graduate. We work with our alumni every year to support our students and recent graduates through programs like this. It takes the mentoring program, Westminster Working Cultures, and things. So before I introduce tonight's speaker, just a little bit of housekeeping. This talk is being recorded. It will be edited. Your cameras and microphones are automatically turned off, so please don't worry about that. The live chat function is on, so the group chat is there for you to ask speakers to questions to our speaker, Yashraj. We'll collate all of your questions. Absolutely. And even though the live chat is on, the live recording, which ends up on YouTube, won't pick up any of your use. Welcome to Yashraj Jain, who will be sharing his insights into what it takes to make better career decisions this evening. After completing a degree in accountancy at the University of Mumbai, Yash received a scholarship to study a master's in applied market and social research at the University of Westminster in 2010. And since graduating, he's amassed a decade of experience in advanced market research, working with some of the world's largest professional and trade bodies across a huge range of sectors, including education. Yash is going to share insights into the key decisions that shaped his career and provide tips and advice on how you too can make better career decisions. And tonight's talk will cover common questions encountered when navigating through your professional journey and the difficult dilemmas which these can sometimes create along the way. Yash is going to talk for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so, and then I'm going to come back online and I will put your questions to him. So please keep those questions coming through the talk. That's enough from me for now, so over to you, Yash.
Thank you so much, Laura. I know we've had some comments in the chat box come in related to audio issues. So just to quickly check that everyone can hear me okay, if you just type into the chat box. Brilliant. Thank you. So shortly you should be seeing some slides pop up on your screen as well. And just want to quickly add to that introduction that Laura has given us all. So yes, this is, I think, the 10th event of the What It Takes series this year, if I've got that correct. Over the past few months, for some of you who may have joined these, we have touched upon topics like building a digital brand, starting an online business, or even finding a virtual job, in today's times. So keeping that sort of theme in mind, what I'm going to touch upon is to build on that, to share some of my life experiences from the last 10 years and cover 8 questions, as I mentioned, in terms of making career decisions at key milestones during that journey that I'm on. And I will be doing that by sharing some anecdotes and examples from my life and from my career journey. And just to flag, I am in a full-time job. So this perhaps may not directly relate to those who are aspiring to start their own businesses or become business owners. But at the same time, I'm sure there'll be some elements of the experiences that I share, which you may be able to apply or adapt to whatever path or journey that you may take. The last thing I want to say before I go into those 8 questions is that when I encounter these during the different stages of my career path, I didn't really have like a Google or a guidebook to refer to. So all of this is, real life examples of how I tackle these. And I'm hoping that maybe this event and the experience that I share, in some way or form becomes that guidebook or gives you that little extra push to make these career decisions, but in a better way going forward. So just to also, again, quickly recap, what's coming up is lots of life stories, lots of anecdotes, and answers to 8 questions, which I think, hopefully, you will all be able to also relate to and find useful when you're making your career decisions. To start off with, let's do a quick poll. I'm just curious and interested, lots of people joining in, which is great. But you'll see a quick poll pop up on your screen anytime soon. And it's just a really easy one, just to check, who's with us, who are there a lot of students here, lots of alumni, what's your relationship with the University of Westminster? So any minute now, you should see a poll come up on your screen. And if you can just take a few seconds to answer that, that'd be great. Yeah, just let's leave it there for maybe 5 seconds. Right, so it seems like obviously we've got a majority of our student base with us, which is great. Again, you perhaps are at that journey where you're going to make some of these career decisions, and also then followed on by some alumni. So do look forward to your thoughts and feedback at the end of the session, because some of you may have things to add over and above what I'll share. So here's a quick sort of, going back in the day around 2004. This is me with my gang of college friends in Mumbai at HR College. And this is what was a Rotaract club at the time that I was a part of. And this is, if I can remember correctly, the time at which I was trying to figure out what career do I want to pursue, just out of school, and trying to figure out what career paths to take ahead. And at the time, there were only, in Mumbai, there were 3 key buckets to choose from. There was arts, commerce, and science. Now, all my school life, I had hoped that I wanted to pursue either architecture or medicine. But over time, and when I was doing that sort of, checking around as to what is it that I should choose, I realized that science perhaps wasn't my cup of tea. Even though it felt very aspirational to me, I knew that my core self would not, be up for all of the rigorous training and, the rigorous academic commitment that was required perhaps to become a doctor or an architect, for example. The next option was commercial studies, which is commerce at the time that was called. I wasn't necessarily interested in that field as such, but there was something I remember my dad said to me, which was, if there is a challenge that's put forth for you in the next 5 years of your university life, maybe you should take that. And I'll come back to why that resonated and why that was so important. So like I said, there was science, which I did aspire to choose, but I didn't because I realized that it wasn't meant for me. Then you had commerce and commercial studies. And the third option at the time, in 2004 was arts, which was, very creative, something that I was really aligned to. I felt like that was something that naturally came to me. And I felt like that could be a career that I'd do very well at, because I'd always been interested in the arts. But going back to that, one piece of advice that my dad gave me, which was, take up something that's challenging. And I know this sounds counterintuitive, but he also went on to add that why don't you commit yourself to learning something that you're not good at? If art comes to you naturally, you'll perhaps excel at it even without studying for it professionally, And maybe later on in my career, I actually realized how important that piece of advice was. And so based on that, I actually chose commercial studies and commerce, which is, similar to business studies, economics, accountancy. And so those are the subjects I went for. And over 5 years, I charted a career in becoming and qualifying to study for my professional accountancy degree in India, back home. So I think I'm just going to leave you with that thought around, try and figure out and choose a career that firstly resonates with you, but then at the same time, maybe something that also challenges you, which can expand the skill sets that you have. If you remember in the photo that I just shared as well, it said HR College and the Rotaract Club. And I just quickly want to share a little snippet about that as well. So this was an extracurricular club, almost like a student society, during the 5 years of college life that I had. And it actually ended up being extremely important for my master's and postgraduate study phase. When I was in school, I was part of the Interact movement, which was another sort of a student club. And HR College was one college in Mumbai at the time would organize these extracurricular activities for school students. And because I participated in those as an interactor, I really wanted to join a university and an organization where I could give back. So I decided that I will take commerce and I will join HR College because I can then be part of the Rotaract movement, which will help me give back to my school, life benefits that I've got. So as a Rotaractor, I then wanted to organize events for school children so that they could benefit just like I had. I've noticed that some questions that have just come in, and I think I've managed to just quickly read one of them, and I have a feeling this next slide will hopefully answer that. So thanks for jumping in there. So in terms of finally deciding in, what was the career that I was meant to do at that point in time when I was leaving school, I can summarize it in these sort of 5 key aspects, but obviously there can be more criteria that you may want to add. I know a lot of people talk about, becoming rich as a goal, becoming famous, perhaps doing something that intrinsically brings you more happiness and that's better for the social good. But initially, I think at that stage, we're not trying to choose a career. It's all about understanding who you are, what are your likes and dislikes. And I know that this sounds perhaps very, obvious, but it can take an individual quite a lot of time to understand who your core being is and, where your value system is, what your core interests are. You'll be surprised if you try and have an out-of-body experience to judge yourself with past photographs, how much of yourself was affected by everyone around you. Just because your friends did something, or friends took science, or friends went to a particular, session or took up a particular course, you may have just gone along. But I think you have to stop and assess yourself and actually understand what's your personality type, what are the goals that you're trying to achieve, where do your interests lie, what's your value system, are you going to be able to work in a career that aligns with that? And finally, obviously, what are your skill sets? And that can help you decide what your core being is, and hopefully then you will be able to choose your future career. I think at that point in time, I very much knew, like I said, that I was attracted towards the art. So a slight twist to this is that advice from my dad, which said, do something challenging, expand your skill set. Why don't you study 5 years of a subject that you're probably not good at? Because hopefully at a later stage in life, that's going to be more beneficial than just, exploring and becoming an expert in something that you're naturally inherently great at. It brings me to my next story, or as I may, as I've called it. And again, thanks so much for all your comments, feedback on the chat. I'm sure we'll have time at the end to tackle that. Hopefully I can answer those towards the end. Now, this photo, as you can see, is from October or November. Sorry, I don't exactly remember when my graduation happened, but I'm sure it was in 2011, towards sort of autumn. So this is our Westminster University graduation. If you look closely, I think I'm almost flying. I'm not even touching the stairs. It was a very exciting, thrilling, proud moment. And it brings me to my next question, which is all about changing career paths. So when I took up this opportunity to come and study abroad, this was an amalgamation of all of the work that I'd done in the Interact at my school and the Rotaract Club at my university, because I got a capacity building scholarship to come abroad and complete my master's. By this time, I'd already graduated as a student in commerce, and I was pursuing my professional accountancy qualification. For some of you, if that sort of doesn't resonate, I'm talking about something like an ACCA or an ICAEW in the Indian context, and it's a very rigorous and tough examination. There are 14 exams, and I cleared 8 of them. So I was on the last leg, the last 6 I think I had to complete. And at that stage in time, I was catching up with a friend, and he said, Yash, why don't you apply for the scholarship? So this was a senior 2 years above me in HR, and he got a scholarship to study abroad. And I said, actually, that's not a bad suggestion. I'll explore it. But again, mind you, this was at a time when I was on my path to become a professional accountant. And that was a course that was rigorous. I'd already cleared 2 levels. The last level was left. And I said, okay, let's just apply. Let's see what comes up. This is just, the energies have to match. I'll apply for a course, then apply for a scholarship. If everything falls into place, I may take it up. But this was only within that span of, say, 7 to 8 months that I decided to study. It was never, something that I was planning during my undergraduate course. So I applied and I got in. I got my admissions offer and then I got a scholarships offer. And I think 8 out of 10 people told me not to take it up. Because again, it was quite standard to, commit to a particular thing, a particular subject matter for your education life and become a professional within that sector. And for me, I was on my path to becoming a chartered accountant, which, thousands and hundreds of students are pursuing. And some of them perhaps aren't even clearing these exams in their first attempt. So a lot of my peers, my colleagues who were studying for the exams were like, you've already cleared so much. Why do you, why are you giving it all up for 1 year of studying abroad? And again, at that point in time, I went back to that star chart that I just showed you. And I felt like, you know what, at this point in time, what might make sense for me is to actually change things a bit. And I had been working at a chartered accountancy firm, in doing accounts, finance, tax. And there was one thing that I loved, which was auditing as part of accountancy. And for some of you who may not really, again, realize what auditing involves, it's actually lots of detailed analysis, going to the root of things, checking, hundreds of perhaps receipts, trying to match things up, joining the dots. And at the core of it, it was trying to solve business problems and answer questions. So when I got this opportunity to study abroad, I said, you know what, I'm going to try and become a specialist in this field. And I decided to study for a course in research. So, accountancy, but I understood what was that one thing that I loved doing and I really enjoyed. And when the opportunity came up to, become an expert within that area, I grabbed it and I said, actually, let's study research, because at the core of it, research skills and doing research involves all of those things that I was doing as an auditor, which is trying to go to the root of things, asking the right questions, reaching out to different stakeholders and getting those answers to solve business problems. I did have 3 other courses on my list, because I think when I got a scholarship, I have a feeling I could choose which course I wanted if I'd already got an offer. The other 3 were diplomatic studies, so they're not really related to accountancy or the reasoning I've given you. The third one was visual culture, and the last one was photography. And again, at that time when I shared this with my family, again, my dad jumped up and he was like, you know what, diplomatic studies and research, he felt like were a good fit. But when it came to visual culture and photography, which some of you may have noticed are again very creative, on the creative side of things, he did give me again that one piece of advice to say, you know what, you're changing career paths, but don't go so out of line and go on such a tangent that you'll be starting from scratch, because all those 5 years of my university life studying commerce and training for an accountant had nothing to do with visual culture and photography. So even though the university had accepted my admission letter for those courses, he suggested I should either opt for diplomatic studies or research, and I went for research. So just to wrap that last slide, and before the next poll comes up, I think the key takeaway there was, if you do want to expand or change paths, you want to try and still keep it in the same universe of what you had originally planned for, but then at the same time, assess and find out what is it that you like doing and what was it that made you change that career path. Obviously, don't go for a complete tangent, perhaps, because you may have to, literally start from scratch. So the question up now, let's take a quick poll again before I move into my third question, which is, would you take up an unpaid internship? I know this is quite a hotly debated subject, and I can see it's sort of 48 to 27. So it seems like a majority, just over half, just around half of you may take it up, but some of you are also sort of a third of you are saying you may not. So let me share sort of my advice on what that might entail and how you may go about deciding on whether to take up an unpaid opportunity or not. So the photo you see here is from the London Olympics 2012, and again, it's a great story that I've shared very many times with a lot of different friends and peers that I've come across. So this was almost by a chance opportunity. I studied at Westminster, as you know, in research, the applied research course, which happened at the Regent Street campus, which also happens to be the home of our language studies. And one afternoon, when I walked into the campus, there was a notice, and the notice said, recruiting for the London Olympics. Any students with language skills, please attend this session in the old cinema. And at the time, that wasn't renovated, so we'd have like normal sessions in the old cinema. And I said, actually, this just sounds interesting. I didn't have a lecture at the time. I was just passing by university, and I said, you know what, I'm going to attend this. So I went and attended that. As it happened to be, they were recruiting for a multicultural group of students who could become translators for the London Olympics. And the team I joined was the language and protocol team, to ensure that if someone from any South Asian country won a medal, their names were pronounced correctly. And you may find this as a very specific role, but the fact that the Olympic Committee took this so seriously, firstly, was commendable. And when our language services weren't required, that's why there was also protocol, which is just to ensure that, you know, all the dignitaries attending were seated at the right places, they were greeted properly, the medal ceremonies happened properly, etc., etc. And so just to share, I mean, this was a once in a lifetime opportunity for me. It was absolutely unpaid. It was by chance that I happened to see it. And obviously I took it up. So the reasons I took it up were because I think I realized that, as I mentioned, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Firstly, I was going to perhaps meet a lot of amazing, engaging, peers who were also volunteering during the Olympics. And sometimes it's not always necessary to, think about just the monetary aspect. There are so many non-monetary factors that you will gain when you take up a work shadowing opportunity or an internship, or just volunteering with your, local community, perhaps. Another anecdote I want to share is when I did my course, all of my lectures were from 6 to 9 in the evenings. And during the daytime, for 5 days a week, I was free. And what I'd end up doing is I'd attend trade fairs. I was working in research, and that's quite wide. So I'd attend professional association meetings, public lectures, networking or career events that were happening. And all of this was around research and marketing and social research as a subject. So, I'd highly recommend you go out there, find out what subject matter you're studying for, and I promise you, you will find one trade event, one professional body who looks after your profession, and absolutely go and volunteer with them. Sign up to be on their board, sign up to volunteer for them, maybe sign up as a mentee. You might find some amazing mentors there. So all in all, an unpaid opportunity actually sometimes can give you much more than a paid one as well. So don't completely, cut it out. Evaluate and assess it. If you have the time, if you have nothing better to do apart from crushing candies on your phone, definitely take up that unpaid opportunity. And while you're at it, remember these 3 things. Ultimately, as people, you have to take that initiative. One other quick anecdote I want to share is when I was doing my master's and the students' union elections had come up, I think there were 14 positions, if I'm not wrong, that they were recruiting for. And they requested students to just apply for those 14 positions, and then there'd be voting and you'd get selected. Of the 14 positions, I think 7 positions had no applications. And that made me think, for a university our size, 22,000 students, why was there such a lack of initiative that there was an unpaid, really great opportunity to lead the students' union, and 7 of the 14 roles did not have enough applications from students who wanted to stand for these positions. So always be present, show up when it's needed, and be switched on. You'll be surprised at how much you'll learn by just observing things around you when you take up these opportunities. And it's those small things that will find extremely useful when you do start that career journey at a later stage. So in short, definitely take up that unpaid opportunity, but obviously given the time commitments are supporting you in that, and prioritize and then take it up. This next photo is from Westminster Business Consultants, WBC. Some of you may have heard of them. I think they're based in a business school in Marylebone, and they still exist. They're part of a European movement of students who run their own companies that are based out of a university. And this is from a Jade Congress meeting in, I think, Belgium, where I met lots of other, I think almost 500 other students from lots of other junior enterprises who were all studying but also running their own companies. And that actually brings me to my next question, which is about restarting and stepping back. So you might remember I mentioned I took up a scholarship, paused my chartered accountancy study, took that flight, which happened to be the first flight that I ever took, at the time, which was directly to London. But when I landed in London, it was almost like I was restarting. It was going back a few steps. I had already got 2 or 3 years worth of experience, I think, as an accountant back home in Mumbai before I landed here. But when I came here, I think I had to try and digest the fact that I might not be able to progress in my career path from 3 to 4, 5. I may have had to start at maybe 1.5 again because everything was new. The context was new, to a limit where even my CV didn't feel right for the context of how jobs and recruitment worked in this country. So when I went to the career center here, they helped me redesign that. And so I think what I'm trying to suggest here is it's not always necessary that every change or step in your career has to be a step forward. In the classic sense of things, that a higher job title, a higher pay, a higher level of responsibility. Sometimes the decisions that you take have to take into consideration that if you have changed career paths, if you are in a different context, if you are again maybe at a later stage getting the realization that what you love is something else and you've got to step back and start it, it's not a problem. So you can always start off and pick up from a few steps behind. So with WBC, it was the same thing. I'd already had a paid job, 3 years worth of experience in India. And when I came here, I got an unpaid job with WBC for a year. But again, I learned so much about the UK way of things, working abroad, the cultural aspect, and even though it's at a marketing assistant level role, I think that was a wise decision at the time because, again, like I said, I had nothing else to do apart from just study for my academic qualifications. And if I was getting real life work experience in research while I was studying that, what better way to kickstart my research career at that point in time? Similarly, at my current juncture where I am in my journey, I am still pursuing my ECCA. So that chartered accountancy exam and degree that I was qualifying for in India, I've got my exemptions, I've transferred them all exams here. But there's going to be one roadblock. I may have to stop working in research and give 36 months worth of accountancy training as work experience requirements to become a qualified ACCA. So I am prepared to do that because what I value is the skill set and the membership of this professional body. How I'm going to manage that, I haven't still figured out, but I know that point is coming up, and it could mean that I might have to stop my progression in my research career and take time out to complete those work experience requirements for my ACCA qualification. And it will mean stepping back. So it's not always a bad thing. If on my agenda, getting the ACCA qualification is slightly more important at this stage than progressing to a director level for perhaps, in a research organization. So let's pause there. Now I've been rattling on, and I've seen lots of comments come in there. So yeah, I want to whiz through this as quickly as possible so I can really hear you out and tackle some of those. But before that, a quick one. Do you aspire to work for a big brand? And a big brand could be perhaps a famous brand. I mean, like an Apple, a Google, a Facebook, any of the big tech brands, a Tesla, perhaps. Is that been an aspiration? Is that something on your mind? It's just a yes/no poll. So just a quick sense of where do you sit on that spectrum? Right. This is quite interesting. It's quite a mixed view. I felt like I'd see a big cliff edge bar chart in one of the polls, but again, I think it's quite neck and neck around sort of, I see 43 to 28. And again, you'll see my take on this as well. But before I go into that big brand question as well, here's a quick anecdote again. This is my first research paper published when I was working at the DMA, the Data and Marketing Association. And this is a professional body of direct marketeers in the UK. And keep that word professional body in mind, because when I started my research career, as soon as I graduated out of uni, I got a job at this professional body, a membership association, which is basically the all-encompassing single voice of the marketeers in the UK. And I did think lots of my peers and colleagues perhaps had joined like an AC Nielsen or an Ipsos Mori or some of those really big research firms. Just to give you some context, they're similar firms like your KPMGs and PwCs in the accountancy world. And again, with all due respect to colleagues and friends who did decide to take that career path, when I joined the DMA, I realized perhaps that wasn't for me. I did not want to work for a big brand at the time. I was at an early stage of my career. And again, this wasn't planned, but having worked at the DMA for a month or two within that first job, I knew that I really enjoyed the variety of the work that I got by being present at a membership body. So our members were like, the Royal Mail, your big agencies like Ogilvy, Unilever, all of these big high street brands, your Santander, NatWest, all of these are direct marketing companies, and they were members of the Direct Marketing Association. And I soon realized that indirectly, all of the work that I did as part of this trade body was helping all of these big brands do their jobs better. And so that's what connected with me. So I never then aspired to have that big brand on my CV, because the work that I did intrinsically made me happy. And I realized that if I was working client side, or maybe in this example, if I did go to the Royal Mail, then all of the time, effort, research work that I did do would only contribute to Royal Mail as an organization. Whereas being at the DMA, being at the central body as a professional association, I would be contributing to publishing thought pieces and research that applies to a wider audience. So there was a time, like I said, when I did pass out, when it was quite all-consuming. Early on, I did feel like I did want that big brand on my CV to come across quite nicely for future roles. But when I started working at the DMA, I decided that I'm going to do this career. I'm only going to work in the professional association and membership body sector. And since then, from the marketing association, I went on to work and do some freelance projects for the travel association. Then I had a full-time job with the fundraising association, which is a global body. And currently I work at the Chartered Accountancy Association. So ACCA, I'm actually working with them in their research. So I did feel like that sector of working in professional bodies is something that, tugs at me. So again, it all depends on how you feel about this and where you want to plan it. But for me personally, as soon as I started my first job, I kept asking myself that question: am I enjoying this? Is this my interest? Is this meeting my value system? And working in that environment. It now brings me to this next anecdote, which is me speaking at an event, a keynote session actually, which was quite a career high for me personally. This was at the Building University's Reputation Conference in Madrid in October 2018. This was perhaps in front of 200 odd, vice chancellors, directors from companies like your QS and Times Higher Education ranking, and I was presenting to them the value of building an alumni base and its impact on reputation. And why this was important to me brings me to my next question, which is, like I said, for me at that point in time in my career, it was a massive achievement. I felt like I was presenting the research that I'd done, again, to affect change in so many different organizations and universities. And at that point in time, maybe I felt also the need to move jobs, because, all of us have these short-term goals every once in a while. And when I was at that organization and when I presented this keynote session, it's somewhere I had sort of this feeling that, I've achieved all I could within this sector with all the research that I've contributed to this sector in the last few years that I've worked at this organization. So very often, again, some people perhaps feel like, it's a job for life, and maybe it might work. But for me, I knew at that point in time when I went back from Madrid and came back home to London, I said, I need a change of things, because I'm getting firstly too comfortable in my current role. It's become quite repetitive. The variety is gone, which is what I'd enjoyed. When I took this role in a professional association, there was something new every day. And finally, it didn't feel challenging enough. So I think those are the kind of things you want to ask yourself when you're trying to think about changing jobs. Again, each of us are built differently. It could be that you might want to continue in a particular role if the progression is happening and if you're quite satisfied with how your career path is going. For me personally, if I look back at the last 10 years, I've changed jobs every 3 to 4 years. And within those 3 to 4 years, I felt like I've become too comfortable in that role. It's not challenging enough. And I perhaps have achieved those key milestones that I wanted to when I did change the job in the first place. Working for the DMA as a national body, that went on to the Fundraising Association, which was a global body with 4 offices across the world. And then finally at ACCA, which has 50 plus offices globally. It felt like there was progression in that aspect. It felt like I was trying to then learn about new sectors every 3 to 4 years. And so those milestones were met, and I felt like, I need to shake things up. And that's when I decided to change jobs and actively seek for new roles. Coming to the end now of a lot of me talking. So yeah, bear with me for the next two questions, which are the last two questions here. We've covered 6 important questions, I hope. The next one is, again, just looking at 2 different reports that I published. One got coverage in The Guardian. Another one was supported by Google, HP, and the Royal Mail, and was a hard copy report that I worked on at the DMA. And this is just to give you a quick sort of contrast of the 2 different bodies that I worked for. And very often when you change jobs, keeping in line with the last question that I tackled, you may come at a situation where you get counter offers from your current employer. So, you've decided that you've got another role or you want to move on, but your current employer wants to try and retain you and keep you in that position by perhaps offering you a better package, a better role, a better job title, or a change of scenario slightly. And so how do you deal with such situations? I think the first time this happened to me, I felt like, what, I'm just going to accept it. This is great. And, everything, perhaps might fall into place again, and, it might become more challenging, and I might get to do a different kind of projects. So let's just stick around for a few more years. But when I spoke to other mentors, senior colleagues and peers within my network, I realized that, I mean, don't quote me on this, but the kind of feedback I got at the time was perhaps 6 to 7 out of 10 times, you may regret accepting that counter offer. So the first thing I did was evaluate all the aspects. It was not just about that little perk or an extra, word to my job title. So exactly think as to why they're trying to retain you and if that's what you want. The second thing was go back and try and figure out why were you leaving. If the reasons that caused you to put in that resignation were that important, and if all of them haven't been ticked off, is it worth sticking around at the same time for your career progression? Is that changing? Are those things being tackled at this time? And finally, the last and most important thing, which was, for me, the make it or break it, was try and visualize yourself 6 months down the line in that same organization where you accepted the counter offer. And when I did that, I realized that, 6 months down the line, if I was still in this new role or new position or new responsibility, I felt like maybe I may resign in 6 months' time as well. So if you were trying to manifest and visualize if the situation would perhaps change in the future as well, and if the answer for that was no, then I think that maybe that is the right time to leave. And, rather than delaying the resignation, why not just take that big decision and move on? So I know this is, again, very, very subjective to the new role that you get, the new job and the organization that you've accepted. But keep in mind that counter offers can sound very attractive. But personally, I've realized that in your career journey, and because you only have a fixed amount of time, however, blunt this sounds, but there's only X number of years you have between your working life and your retirement life, perhaps. So you do want to ensure that in the long term, you have managed to, tick off all of those things that you wanted to. So if a new opportunity, a new sector, a new set of colleagues, a new change of environment, workplace, perhaps even city comes up, evaluate all of those aspects as well. It's not always just about, the job title and your salary, which is this amazing illustration by Liz and Molly that I found. So you might want to measure success and decide that actually these are the 2 things that are most important. And I've got this at my current job as well. I'm going to continue doing at it. But think about the other things that matter, in terms of physical and mental health, your private and personal and work life, your free time. Are you really enjoying what you're doing? Is it giving you that variety that you seek? And then you can decide on moving on in your roles. And this is the last poll for today. And I think in a very fleeting glance, I saw someone did type this in the chat box, but you'll see what I mean in a bit. So let's bring this last poll up. What do you feel like? Where do you sit on this spectrum of, doing what you love or spending your career life loving what you do? I read it carefully. When I first read it as well, I felt like it's the same thing, but it's not. Yep, the poll's up now. So do what you love or love what you do. It's almost like a chicken and egg question, isn't it? What came first? Do what you love. I think we do have a bit of a clear winner for this one, which says do what you love. And that's interesting as well. Personally, I think I'd be with the 9 students or 9 respondents in the it depends category, and you'll see why. So here's a quick snapshot again, a few photos and a collage here, because it all depends. So if I was to quickly whiz through my journey, I took up accountancy because I thought I wouldn't be good at it. And I thought, let's take up a challenge to study that and expand my skill set. I changed jobs to research because I thought I want to become a specialist in something that I loved as part of studying accountancy and working in accountancy, which was auditing. But at the core of it, I did also remember that I am a creative person. And that's the creative energy that needs releasing out somewhere. And I then ended up taking on extracurricular activities where I could do what I love. So for me, like I said, it depends. For me, the balance was the work that I took up, because I took it up as a challenge. I tried to love what I did. I tried to love accountancy because I was doing it. I couldn't be stressed or sad, or I couldn't be cribbing about it all the time, because that's not a nice situation to be in. So when I was going to uni, when I was pursuing my chartered accountancy, I tried to fit in and find things within accountancy that I would love. But outside of that, you've got your other life as well. You've got your vocations that you can pursue, your interests that you can pursue. You've got, the Choral Society's banner here celebrating 175 years that I sang at. You've got the Westminster Abbey celebrations that I was part of as an alumni. A few years ago, we did Copacabana as a musical, full-fledged, musical, and I did costume design for that. I mean, who would have thought I'd design costumes for the University of Westminster's musical? And that's a bake-off that happened at one of my jobs that I took part in. So I think it depends. And the key thing here to realize is that if you are not loving what you're doing, or if you are not doing what you love, you have to slowly but steadily try and narrow that gap. So I think I saw again in the comments that you can't force yourself to do something. And even if you force yourself to do something, or if I forced myself to love accountancy for 5 years, I don't think it would have lasted for 5 years. Perhaps maybe in 6 months, I would have realized, you know what, this is taxing. And you'll know that. Your body will tell you that. Your mind and your heart is not in this. It's a pain to get up in the morning and go to uni and pick up that accountancy textbook. If that was the case, I wouldn't be studying it. It was only because there were things within it that I found that I do love, so I started to love what I did. But what I'm if you're being forced, or you're telling yourself to, or if you're forcing yourself to do something, don't. Because again, life's too short. You've got a very finite amount of time to pursue a career, study for a subject, expand, and flourish in it. So try and reduce that gap and pick up something where you either start to love what you do and it brings you peace and that intrinsic value and makes you feel happy, or you take up a career in something that you already love doing. Like I have a friend who's a dancer. Dance is a passion. It's in her blood, and she's made a career out of it. So she completely does what she loves. So what came first? Do what you love or love what you do. Something for you to think about. A quick recap of the questions that we just covered. What career to choose? Again, like I said, the key things there were choose something that's challenging and choose something which resonates with your core being. What is it that you really want out of life? What's your purpose? It might not come to you when you're in school. It might come to you sometime later. I know it sounds like we all know ourselves very well, but I think you need to sit down with yourself and really figure out what your interests are. When to change career paths? Specialize basically in something that you like doing after a point in time, but don't go on a complete tangent. Working for unpaid roles, personally from me, absolutely. Just be there, be present, take up those opportunities, take up the initiative, and just be present when an opportunity arises if you have the time on hand to take it up. Don't just think about the money, think about the experiences, the network, the things that you learn by just being observant and keeping your ears and eyes open. Basically, you just learn so much. I mean, I can't articulate how much I learned in those 2 months of volunteering for the Olympics, just by being present at an event of that level. Restarted entry level, absolutely okay, not a bad thing. When I decided to study for my master's abroad, I knew things would be different. So I couldn't then only expect to pursue a job or a career a level above. I did have to start again, and it was great, I think, looking back. Big brands on your CV. I see that one's it depends. For me, it did not initially. Like I said, it did affect me when a lot of my peers and colleagues did, were joining some companies which were the big brands, or it was an all-consuming thought. But it doesn't necessarily have to. Once you start working in an organization, you'll immediately realize if you're the right fit with that culture or not, and it doesn't always have to be a big brand. When is it a good time to change jobs? I know I'm just putting a number there, but if I could go back by my anecdote, I've changed jobs 3 to 4 years. But at points in time when I've become too comfortable in my current job, when it's not challenging anymore, and when I feel like I've achieved all I had to, when I've reached a milestone at that current job, then I need a new chapter to open up. Accepting counter offers, again, the short answer for that one's perhaps I would say no, because when I visualize myself 6 months down the line in the same job, I visualize myself resigning again, So there are core reasons why you feel you're going to quit and put in that time, effort, and invest in seeking for a new role. And when you do get that new role, perhaps out of respect and the time and effort that you put in, I think it's just better to move on and go ahead. And finally, do what you love or love what you do. It depends. So I'll leave you with that thought and this Ikigai chart. And I think that's what someone had mentioned in the chat box. If you haven't come across this, it's a great, very handy tool. Again, do spend some time by yourself or with a group of friends who you know well, who know you well, who know your interests well, and have a discussion. Have a discussion about this. Try and find out where do you fit. I know this feels like this is all that is. Maybe there are more aspects and elements to this, but I think it's a great start. So you can try and answer those questions and find out where do you fit. What are the things that you do that will fit into these brackets. So if I have to, again, I've already shared quite a lot about my past career journey and the decisions I've made. But in terms of my passion areas, it's all about the creative, it's all about the art, the extracurricular, the choir singing and costume designing. I'm good at that and I love doing it. And it perhaps doesn't make me any money, but it doesn't matter because it makes me feel good, volunteering, participating in such cultural activities. My profession, what I can be paid for and what I'm good at, I think I've got that balance. I started off in chartered accountancy, took up that research piece from my auditor experience, and then I realized I can get paid for it. So become a professional researcher at this point in time. What I love and what the world needs, perhaps I haven't figured that out yet. I don't know what the mission is in life in that sense. And if you talk about the vocation side of things as well, perhaps there are times when I may be jumping in and out of those two aspects, but mapping this career journey by trying to understand who you are and what you stand for will really help you make the right decisions and make better decisions for your career. One last thing to add, just above all of this, is ask and talk to people. When you're making those decisions, the more perspectives you get from everyone, the more informed you are. And always remember that just because someone's given you advice and given you suggestions doesn't mean you have to follow all of it. So personally, I'll go out to say 10, 20 people when I'm making a decision like this, because I know their feedback will be valuable. But ultimately, the decision's mine own. But the important thing is I've listened to all those perspectives, I've digested it, and based on their experience and knowing myself and what I need, I'm able to decide the next step in the future. So please do reach out to either someone in your family, colleagues, peers, mentors, university, academics, your career service. Do not just sit in a bubble and try and answer those questions in a quick and hasty manner, because these are going to, really change the next, say, decade or so for you guys. So thank you so much for having me. I think we perhaps will hopefully have some time for Q&A. And goodbye and thank you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you wish to. Hopefully, we can take this conversation forward as well. And this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yashraj. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Basically, I'm going to take over from Laura because she's had some connection issues, as you could probably tell from the beginning of the event. So Apologies, everyone. You're stuck with me. I know that a few of you will have seen me before. I'm Hayden Worley, part of the Alumni team, and I manage the What It Takes series. So in a sense, it's probably quite apt because this is the last online event of the 20 to 21 academic year. So yeah, I will put the questions to you, Yash. I think you might not have your camera on, but that could be because of your connection also, but it's no problem at all. But basically, my wonderful colleagues, oh, there we go. And if your connection does drop, then no worries. Just we all know what it's like. And thanks for bearing with us, by the way, everyone, because as you're all aware, whether you're studying, working, or trying to socialize remotely, connection issues can be a nightmare and just a sign of these prolonged, strange times. But yeah, huge thanks, Yash. And so my wonderful colleagues, they've put together all of the questions that have been posted in the group chat. So I'll put as many of those as I can to you right now, and let's see how we go. I know we've had a lot of questions. So let's see, some colleagues have bunched them kindly into some topics as best they can. So let's see. Mm-hmm. So let's look at planning your first professional steps. That seems like a good place to start. So someone has said, I have found the area in which I would like to work, but really struggle to find any job, even internships related to it that do not require experience. How do you go about gaining experience if you cannot afford to volunteer? So yeah, that's quite relevant to much of what you were saying.
Yeah, thanks for that question. One option comes to mind, which is taking up personal passion projects. And what I mean by that is, I can't quite tell what is the subject matter at hand that you're studying, or what was it that you're struggling with in terms of getting a job or an internship, unless it's very specific and niche. But the least that you can do is, with the resources that you have, your laptop, all the facilities and the software is available, just take up a passion project related to the subject area and complete it. Build almost like a project portfolio, which can hopefully help you then reach out to employers, even with an opportunity, to say, listen, I've done this. I'd also say upskill digitally, because when you do some of this, you want to be able to share it in an easy format. So, create those passion projects, build that online portfolio, perhaps even on LinkedIn, and then try and reach out to share that, you've taken the initiative in your free time and you worked on this small, effort of yours. And just to quickly add to that, very often it could be that you can reach out to some charitable organizations. I've had that in the past where my friends or colleagues I've worked with, when they've struggled to find roles, they've agreed to do things voluntarily for free, but in a business context. So it's not going out to do community service or, food donation drives. They're all, again, amazing, great things. But you can always try. And so in my case, I could have maybe volunteered a summer to work in the accountant's office at my local charity if they needed that extra pair of hands to, sort the bills out or manage their bookkeeping. Again, I'm not saying always the charity will accept that, because there are lots of other rules and paperwork and admin to be done, even when you're just someone on your, your organization with induction and things like that. But there's no harm asking. The worst that can happen is they'll say no. But all you need is that one yes. So don't get disheartened. I'd say reach out to organizations who need it. And if they don't respond, just take up a passion project and do it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Yash. So sticking along a similar theme of those kind of early decisions, so what advice would you have for gaining a sense of direction and having a set career goal? And just for a bit of context, the guest who has put this has said, I'm just beginning a pharmacology course and there are many job opportunities that I could delve into, and I'm still uncertain as to what career pathway to go down.
I think, thanks for that background, actually. So I think in the initial stages, what's important is just to nail the right kind of subject area and sector or, industry that you want to work in. So I think you've already identified pharmacology or pharmacy as a sector. And as you pursue that, you realize that there are specialist areas in there. So it's not like you perhaps need to know this at this stage, if I've understood your question sort of correctly. So I wouldn't stress too much what's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years within pharmacology for you, with all the developments and things happening. You never know which path you might get into. All I'd say is, ensure you're getting all the knowledge and you're doing your degree really well, trying to understand all aspects of pharmacology. But as you pursue and as you specialize, perhaps in your master's or you take up your first role, you'll get that real life experience of some of those aspects within pharmacology, and that's where you need to ask yourself, do you see yourself in this particular role, or do you need to switch? The second thing I'd add is reach out to, again, there'll be some association or group of professionals who are pharmacists and who have their own trade body. Ask them what is it that pharmacology entails. So you want to put that full tree diagram together as to this is pharmacology and these different aspects that you can go into. So, for example, my partner is a cybersecurity specialist, and she only started working in the sector, I'd say 3 years ago, actually. She had a chemistry background. But when she started in cybersecurity, she reached out to a lot of cybersecurity professionals to try and find out, is it the technical aspect, is it the back end, is it the front end, is it the cybersecurity audit aspect, which is very theoretical, is it ethical hacking, is it pen testing? And the more she realized what specific areas were, she then chose the top two that felt like, roles that she could work in. So ask professionals what future roles and competencies might look like within pharmacology. And I think that will help you choose which area of pharmacology you would be most interested in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yash. So I think because we've got so many questions coming in, but we've got plenty of time as long as you're okay, Yash, to get through.
Fine. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. To get through some more kind of a similar vein, but different enough to ask you. So let's see. So do you think interning in different fields to increase knowledge and experience is the right path to take for any person who does not yet have a clear vision?
Sorry, pardon me. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, do you think interning in different fields to increase knowledge and experience is the right path to take for any person who does not yet have a clear vision?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'm taking this question at face value. So you do have to prioritize and think of where you want to put in that time and effort. So generally internships are at least a semester, I'd say 2 to 3 months, unless you're thinking of work shadowing, which perhaps might be a fit if you want the variety within a month, just to try and understand what is it to work shadow as in a marketing agency, what is it to work shadow in a retail job, what is it to actually do, I can't think of a career option now, but basically work shadowing are more tighter, shorter, perhaps experiences that you can get, but you do need the right contacts. They should agree to you coming in and being an observer, trying to figure out what the on-the-job environment looks like. When it comes to internships, that has to build, and add to your CV and your career, because you are studying a particular subject and you want to try and take an internship where you can do those projects which are related to your subject. So when you graduate, if you did 3 internships in 3 years of your undergraduate degree, you had 3 good projects you worked for at 3 organizations, and that really puts you in a good stead when you're looking for jobs on graduation. So I'm not sure internships perhaps are the right way to go all out there and try the variety and invest all of that time and effort and then choose one where you feel like you're the best fit for that career. But maybe something like work shadow might be a better fit, because internships are slightly more time consuming. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next one, it's about graduate schemes. So do you recommend applying for graduate schemes at the moment, as the job market is so tricky? And for context, as an undergrad student, I feel like the graduate schemes are filled up with graduates with master's degrees, as they are considered more qualified.
Personally, I have not worked in a graduate scheme. And I think it's, again, part of that jobs mix. If in your list of things you've tried, just going out there and securing a job without it being part of a graduate scheme, and you've been unsuccessful, if you've gone out there and, perhaps done a few internships, few personal projects, few unpaid opportunities, and even then you haven't secured a role. But if you do feel like a graduate scheme is somewhere where you might make it, you might make the cut and you might kick off your career, I think it's not a bad idea to actually get going. Some graduate schemes are also very sector specific. So I think those are the building blocks. I think somewhere like in the banking sector, perhaps, if you are pursuing a career in banking, some of the graduate schemes are the best way to get in, because you are getting at the very first level, getting all of their, support, induction, training that's available. So the whole package of a graduate scheme in a sector like that is very, very valuable. So I think, keep that in mind, and then decide whether these graduate schemes are best for you or not. I think the main balance is you don't want to. I'm not saying graduate schemes are not at the right. How do I say this? But sometimes it could be that you might get a better job without starting at that graduate scheme level. So I just want to make sure you've tried that and then realize actually that's not clicking. So maybe I'll go for the graduate scheme. But if you feel like your sector needs you to start off in a graduate scheme, absolutely go there and start it off.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Yash. Let's see. So let's change it up a little bit. So we've got a few questions on applications and interviews for jobs. So firstly, what changes would you make to your CV or cover letter when applying for a job while trying to change your career to an area you have no work experience for?
It's all about personalization. To be frank, there's this balance between being transparent and true and just trying to make things match for the sake of it, or just coming up with random, smaller experiences and making them feel like, this is a big part of your life, which is why this match is happening. Let me give you another example. So when I was studying for my master's degree, and I did skip out on this detail, but when I did my undergraduate in accountancy, I did 6 extra exams in the 3 years of my undergraduate degree and qualified as a advanced diploma in travel and tourism. And again, that was that sort of creative element of my 3 years in college as well. So I did travel and tourism advanced diploma. And when I came to the UK and was trying for, the summer roles and smaller, term time roles, I applied to become a guide in the Queen's Gallery at Buckingham Palace. And this was an application to the royal household. And until that point in time, my entire application was accounting, bookkeeping, audit, research. And I said, I need to change this. So I, sat through in the library for half and I said, what about my journey so far matches up with this? And I said, travel and tourism. It's all about travel and tourism. I know what a tourism product is, how to make it interesting, how to sell that. And the tourism product here was the gallery, the Queen's Gallery, which we had to, not sell, but we had to take the visitors through that experience. So I really went back, into my external hard disk, which basically has my whole life in it. Picked out the main things, the projects I'd worked on in my travel degree, why I took up research. And luckily for me, because research was a very wide subject, I could always, massage it slightly to say this is just a skill set that I'm learning. And I got an interview and I did get the job. Imagine this was like a 2-month job for the summer. I'd applied in January. The job was supposed to start in October of that year. But by that time, I graduated and already got my job at the DMA. So that was another career decision. It would have been great on my CV. My contract said, Her Majesty, I'm Yashraj Jain. And I said, I want to do this 2-month job. But when I sat through and thought about it, I said, no, this doesn't make sense. This is not what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. So it's all about personalization. And I think if I could get that summer job at the Royal Galleries with my travel and tourism background, anyone can. You just really need to be true to yourself and tell that story well. And go back and think about how can you make those dots join, the skills that they want and the skills that you have. And in terms of number of CVs and versions, I think I'm on perhaps, CV version 102 or something. Like it's always changing with every job application. But the one source of truth is my LinkedIn page. It might look really long and encyclopedic, but I've used that as my way to log in things so that no matter which job or what project or what career I've taken up, it's all saved in that repository, and I can pick and choose things from there and put it in that 1.5-page CV of mine whenever applying.
Oh, great. LinkedIn is so crucial, like you say, and it's so good to hear so many anecdotal parts during this event. I think that's part of what's so great about it, that obviously the students and recent grads get to hear from people who've literally been in their shoes, and sharing all of these things is so nice. That was a pretty cool story.
It's making me feel like going back to Westminster, actually. Because even the Royal Household job, I think I got through the career portal. We had something called Prospects, I think, and I applied through that. So the university has played a big part in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to, find out about these things.
That's great to hear. And the next question actually flows on quite nicely from what you've just said in a way. So let's see. So what advice would you give to graduates who were unable to make the most of their extracurricular or internship opportunities during university? And what approach should they take to build a better CV? So that's quite a tricky one in some ways, a different approach. But
it is a tricky one, but I think I'm going to give a tricky response because, I mean, it is a cutthroat competitive world. So if you don't have that holistic mix of extracurriculars and say, okay-ish average academics, which is what sort of my story is, you have to be great in your academics. I think that's the thing. You've got to be in the top to attract the attention of that recruiter, of that subject matter expert, of that HR manager that you're applying for, because you're the best at what you did in uni in that particular subject. And I think some of that is absolutely valued in, even like I said, in the investment banking, in the marketing world, copywriting, and analysts out there. If you've got that, if you're that prodigy, ensure you've got a really, really good grade. And you've really, worked on a project or two which directly align with your aim for your first job. Almost like come up with think through about your projects at uni, which could take up a real organization's projects' place, if you know what I mean. So if you're pitching for a marketing campaign for an agency or a product, so take up, say, Costa. I'm just hypothetical. You're studying for advertising. Take up Costa as an example. Do an amazing pitch plan, an amazing marketing campaign for them as your dissertation project. And then go and apply to Costa and say, you know what, I've done this for you. Because 3 years, 4 years down the line, you will have to open a subscription plan, just like Pret a Manger, and £20 a month, unlimited drinks. Made that entire business plan and marketing plan for you. But all of that comes down to you giving your 100% to your course. Because if you then take that lightly as well, then you've not got the academic scores, nor do you have any extracurriculars, and I think it'll be tricky.
Great, really appreciate your honesty and sound advice for sure. So let's see, we'll mix it up again a little bit. So we've got about careers, and a lot of this might be more applicable to the recent graduates, but we of course have a good number of them on the call. So here we go. How do you deal with a career path that only becomes rewarding after 8 to 10 years after graduating? So that's another fairly testing question for you, but yeah.
8 to 10 years, and then it becomes rewarding. I think it's perhaps one which requires you to persevere and have lots of patience, I guess. And there may have been a reason why you stuck at it for 8 to 10 years. I guess when you have started to reap those benefits after those 10 years, I'd say then try and, really enjoy and make the most of what you can get out of it. I mean, from the question, it seems like no other doors may have opened up and you were perhaps stuck or, been in a role where you were trying to force yourself to love what you do. And it was quite taxing. But after a point in time, it all seemed to, give you its benefits. So, if you weren't able to switch during those 8 to 10 years, I mean, kudos and hats off. And I think once you have started to feel the rewards, make the most of it. I mean, bask in that because you worked really hard and persevered at it for 10 years is all I can say, actually. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah. I mean, my first thought was, why would you stick around for 10 years if you didn't find it rewarding in the first place? But I guess it's the context that you're asking it in. Yeah.
Brilliant. And that feeds in really nicely again, as if this was scripted. So here we go. Switching careers now. We've got a few questions, quite a few on this sort of general topic, actually. So firstly, how do you motivate yourself to keep going when changing your career path? And then a bit of context. Sometimes I see job descriptions and I feel a bit insecure. So do I not apply because I feel like they would look at the CV and laugh or something?
Always apply. As far as you're saying the truth, your sole truth, and you're saying your story well, apply. And like I said earlier, the worst that can happen is that they'll say no. But in the bargain, you've at least sat down, personalized your CV, practiced how to, prepare yourself for an interview. So never not apply. If you like the job description and if you instantly in that first, second or third reading feel like, what, some of this I can do, some of this I can't, I'd still apply. And I've done that in the past. You always have a key requirements and a desired skill set piece in the job description. And there have been times when I haven't ticked each of the bullet points in the key skills either, but I've still applied. And and when your CV cuts through that first list or that first pile and you're called for that interview, that's the main stage where you can, really make a difference. Because even though I've been transparent and can't do that level of coding or that level of analysis, it's the personality that you bring to the job, it's the cultural fit that they see, and that's some of the key reasons why hiring managers hire someone as well. So don't just look at the job description and feel this imposter syndrome, like, oh, I have studied it, but I can't remember anything from what I've studied, or I don't think I can do that role. I can only do 2 out of 5 of these things. But maybe the other 3 things that you can't do are things they may teach you on the job as well. So I think if it's something that you're visualizing and manifesting, and if it meets your sort of, if it meets the criteria of the job that you wanted to apply, even though you don't have all the skill sets, still apply, but be transparent about it, either at the interview stage or in your CV stage or in your cover letter. But yeah, apply. And sorry, Hayden, if I can also just add to that, I've seen some comments come in about, lack of jobs, struggling to find jobs in the current times. It's tricky. What should we do? Market's down. Again, I don't want to sound sort of the devil's advocate, but if you have a great personalized CV, if you've searched enough, and if you've really applied for jobs, like I'm saying, I'm not exaggerating. I think when I was at uni, I applied for at least 70 to 80 roles per day. And I'm saying 70 to 80 for a particular personalized CV. So, 80 accountancy jobs, 80 travel jobs, 80 research jobs. So you would have one generic CV and cover letter, one travel-related CV cover letter. So, and that's doable, right? You can have 4 or 5 versions at any point in time. And at any given week, take 15 minutes out to concentrate. Okay, today I'm going to go onto Guardian and just look at travel jobs and apply for those. And that's the kind of, this is again 10 years ago, but if that's not the kind of scale you're applying for, you're not going to get your job on a platter. So after doing all of that, even then, if you can't find a job, perhaps then, hit me up on LinkedIn and I can try and suggest or help you with some more suggestions on how to make that career decision and what to do next. But if you've got a great CV, good cover letter, really personalized, you're applying for the right jobs and you're applying for a lot of jobs in that bucket, something has to click, because the stats are out there. There is a need, there is demand from the business sector as well. They need qualified people to do these things. So I can't digest that there are empty roles and there are lots of people without jobs. That can't happen.
Excellent. That was invaluable. Thanks so much, Yash. So let's see. Are you still okay? Because we've got a few more questions.
Absolutely. Yes. I am still okay. Yeah, we've got 15 more minutes and I think 80 odd people still with us. So if they're listening, I'm happy to talk.
Yeah, it's clearly going to be very impactful. So let's see. So this is a slightly difficult one, but I'll ask it. What is the best way to showcase an experience related to your first career path in your CV when applying to jobs in a new area, especially in terms of highlighting your transferable skills? And I think the transferable skills element comes up in quite a few other questions. So yeah.
So I think maybe 3 or 4 years into my sort of career, when I switched jobs, and someone recommended to me that I should change the layout of my CV, and that was all around this transferable skills aspect and highlighting the key things or projects that I'd worked on in particular roles. And that advice was all around not explaining job responsibilities under your employment history, but completely rebranding that to achievements. And as soon as I started thinking about the achievements that I had at the DMA, at that fundraising association case, at ACCA now, or at all of the freelance projects that I did, or at all of the volunteering opportunities that I had. It completely changed the story, and it actually helped me almost sell myself better for those roles. And I was going through my list of job responsibilities and completely changing the idea. Instead of saying analyze set of survey data, it was all about, solving problems for this area of work and contributing to the organization's, bottom line by bringing in sponsorship income, etc. So it was all about trying to explain the achievements that were there in those roles, which also means that you keep your CV really to the point and highlight those key things. When it came to transferable skills, I also amended at some point in time the CV, add a generic skills section at the top. So you've got your problem, your objective, your career objective, and then you've got your skills. So I just bucket all of the generic research skills that are applicable and are transferable to most of these research roles, even bringing in some skills that I, had learned or built when I was working as an accountant. But in the particular job roles, I try not to repeat any two achievements or any two similar things, because very often as a researcher, you will have, scripting service, analyzing data, reporting, publishing reports, designing reports, charting, tables, briefs, etc., etc. So instead of wasting all of that white space on that 1.5 sheets of paper that you have, try and show the full spectrum of your skills in each of the roles, highlighting your key achievements, which are not repetitive, but then have all your transferable and generic skills at the top. So I think that hopefully will highlight and pull out the main achievements and the main things that you've achieved and progressed at in your previous roles, and bring that to the forefront for your new recruiters. And then also allow for some space for the transferable skills to be also highlighted.
Awesome. Thank you, Yash. And we seem to have lost your camera. It could be because of your connection, though, but just in case you didn't know. But let's see. So I think it makes sense to rewind it. Let's see.
It's okay. I mean, I don't know what's.
I can't see it. I don't know if anyone wants to write in the chat. Oh, there we go. Magic. So yeah, it makes sense, I think, to rewind a little bit, because we've had a few questions that are more kind of on the university decisions and perhaps for the current students. So a fairly general one, but what is the best course of action to build on my CV, as I'm currently a second year undergrad and do not have enough extracurriculars to compete with others?
Best course of action, I guess you've almost answered some of this yourself. If you don't already have it and you're still in your second year, you still have one whole year to go. So take stock and maybe map it out on that Ikigai chart or on that star chart and model it and try and understand what's available in and around your course, in the university campus you're at. Is there a trade body or a professional association that's the overarching sector body for your line of study that you're doing? Is there something you can do with them, either volunteer or take part in their young people's program? Actually, on that point, there are young people's programs at almost every organization. This is, again, a bit of a tangent, but I think I had joined the young people's program and was on the board with the Victoria and Albert Museum. Even though it's an arts body, I'd bring my research skill sets because we do lots of qualitative interactions with artists at the time. So yeah, absolutely look out for those things, but take up maybe 3 things and ensure that you do those 3 engagements well in the next 1 year. And I think that is good enough. So when you say extracurriculars, what I showed you is over 10 years. It's not like I'm, singing at the choir and in costumes and going to the VNA and doing other things all at the same time. This is different points in time, which is why I said the do what you love or love what you do. It depends. It's that point in time, things can change. We all change as people. What I did love doing 10 years ago, I would not like doing now. But at this point in time for you, look what's available, take up 3 things and do that well and add that to your extracurriculars. I think that's really, really helpful. And I think you have time on your side at this point. So definitely take it up.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Let's have a look. Okay, so this is a bit of a specific one, but it will definitely be relevant to quite a few people, I think. So to what extent do you suggest our module options and final year project topics affect the career options we will have access to after graduation?
I'd say it can affect up to 60 to 70%, because if you plan it really well, it is a win-win situation, because you have not only submitted and completed a task and progressed your, university studies, but at the same time, you've got the chance to work on a real life project, which you can showcase when you're seeking out these job roles. So again, I have so many friends that I know who did the public relations and marketing communications course at the Marylebone campus. And very often for them, it's a very nice fit, because all of their project work, they just reach out to these partnership and engagement, departments at big companies. So like your Costas and your Witter, or, whichever brands you align with, and just request, to get some access, or as a student, take up a project that could be valuable to them. And so often those companies and brands are really happy to do that, because they're getting stuff done for free, perhaps, and you're getting access to all of their expertise, insight, all of their papers, documents, annual reports, etc., to work on. And like I said, it's a win-win, because you are working on a real project, but at the same time completing that action on your university degree, checklist in terms of submitting that project. So my dissertation was on the university's careers service, which is, I think, at the time based on Cavendish Street. And it was 15 interviews with undergrad and postgraduate students to try and find their service experience. So before they went to the service, during the careers service, and the CV check or the mock interview that they did, and after the service. And that really helped me kick off this sort of, again, journey when I worked at the Educational Fundraising Association, because I had all of that insight around what goes on in the student experience side of things for the careers office. And I think with Westminster, a lot of our courses naturally are aligned with professional bodies and associations, and some of our contacts and partnerships are really good. So, I mean, I'm hoping the module leaders or the academics won't hold me up for this, but I'm sure they'll be able to connect you with corporates or partners or the business center, where you might be able to reach out to the right kind of organizations where you can take up these projects and make them your own, university coursework.
Excellent, thanks. And it's a bit of a boring housekeeping point, this, but as you mentioned, the careers team being based in Cavendish, it was Cavendish House. Ironically, all colleagues from that building, 101 New Cavendish Street, vacated to move offices right before lockdown kicked in here for the first time. So yeah, it was almost to the day for some teams. And careers, once the world, or at least London, has slowly reopened a little bit more, careers will be based at Marylebone campus, and there'll be and a new and exciting, almost like an employability hub based there, as well as pockets of other similar employability related teams. But just for those students.
Thank you for clarifying. I may have confused the students.
No, literally until right before last March, it was Cavendish House. But times have changed. So I'm conscious that we're nearly there with time. So I think maybe if I just ask two more questions. It's tough to choose, and apologies to any. You've managed to answer an awful lot of them, and huge thanks for that. But if we haven't had time to go over them, I do apologise. So let's see. So they're two fairly not generic, but more general questions. But I think they cover things quite well. So if we do a year in placement, are there any tips you could share? And of course, you kind of already mentioned some, but maybe some top takeaway tips to make the best use of that.
Sorry again, can you please repeat that?
Yeah, sure. So if we do a year in placement, are there any tips you could share to make best use of it, basically?
Year in placements, I think the big thing to remember is you are going to be obviously graduating a year late, I think, if I got that sort of timing correctly. And to be frank, coming from the Indian education system, time is everything. Like, as soon as you finish your undergraduate, there's hardly anyone who doesn't study for a master's. I know I'm generalizing, but it is competitive. Everyone's jumping in for that master's and trying to finish it as soon as possible. A large part of why a lot of people do come to the UK to finish their master's is because it's 1 year, and in India it's 2 years. So keep that in mind. And having said that, I think it already puts the pressure on you to ensure that if you're taking that year out to do a placement, that you have thought through exactly the organization that you're going to work at, the kind of role that you're taking up, and the fact that, again, you're just going to be really switched on and be present, because you are giving up 1 year of your studies and you're going to be graduating 1 year late. But you want to make sure that you're overcompensating for that by ensuring that you're spending that 1 year in the right place with the right kind of people, doing the right kind of work, which is going to help you progress not only in your fourth or final year of your degree, but then even beyond that. So do assess that and ensure that you only take it up if all of those criteria have been met. Don't just do it for the sake of it. I mean, you can do it for the sake of it if you just feel like you want to break from university life, but I don't think that's really going to contribute to your career journey much, apart from the fact that you took a year away and worked at an organization. So yeah, do keep those things in mind about, the right kind of organization, the right kind of projects will come your way, and the right kind of role and the job role has been set up for you, which will all help you then progress to come back to uni and study and then apply for your next role.
Lovely stuff. Thank you. And just a final question. It's definitely putting you on the spot. But how do you decide which career path to take? So basically, which kind of personal or professional factors should you consider? So that's a huge question for 1 minute or so. But maybe just the key points. It kind of summarizes things quite nicely, I think.
I think it all comes down to, like I said, taking stock of who you are as a person. And I know I've taken that for granted when someone told me, do you really know yourself? And I said, yeah, of course I know myself. But when you're actually in those real life situations and you're made to do those things in a job or, even in group work at uni, you realize, you know what, I'm not comfortable doing this. I'm not feeling nice about this. I'm not satisfied or content. This is not going to make me wake up every day in the morning and go to my job desk. So you really have to, I think the one key thing is to first try and understand who you are, what you stand for, what your value system is, what your interests are. Don't take that for granted, and list it down even if so, because when you write it and you see it again, you become more aware of the kind of career path that you want to take. For me personally, I think the overarching theme for me was it has to be intrinsically satisfying. So it was never about the money. It was never about the big brands. It was never about the location or a snazzy office with a table tennis court or any of those perks. It was just the fact that if I'm spending 7 hours at an organization working on something, I'm feeling happy and I'm feeling good about it intrinsically. So, if I was to work on a research project that I didn't align with at all, day in and day out, on a subject matter that did not resonate with me at all, and again, with all due respect of all of the thousands of people, perhaps I'm going to use this as an example, but I did once apply for a job at Philip Morris International. It's this big tobacco company, I think, and they had a big research position come up. It was in HR, so HR, human resources research. But while I was applying for the role, I stopped and I said, you know what, I don't think I can work for a company like this. For whatever reason, I never worked for it. I was judging it purely based on its reputation. But that didn't intrinsically align with who I was, and I don't think it would make me get up in the morning. And so I stopped that application midway. But like I said, obviously people do work for that organization, and with all due respect for all of those peers and colleagues, but maybe it works for them, and that's the beauty of this, isn't it? Which is why they may have realized that it's the right fit for them, and it wasn't for me. So just do that soul seeking a little bit, and try and find out what are your interests and how you align with that core being that you are.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. No, it really does. And it's just an absolutely wonderful way to end this online series. As you mentioned, the 10th event of our now online series. So a huge thanks, Yash. That was really, really insightful.
Thank you.
And I can't thank you enough.
No, not at all. It was a pleasure. I'm so thrilled and glad I could share, some of my experiences, and hopefully in some way or form it has been helpful to all of the attendees.
Incredibly so. And not only was it brilliant, but I think you're 5.5 hours ahead over there. So a huge thanks and a round of applause from me, because that is exceptional. You deserve a big sleep, I think. So
yeah,
just
go straight to bed.
just a small piece of housekeeping. As I said, it's the last event in the online series. The series will resume in October. I'm going to pop a couple of things in the group chat just now. So all the future events will be on the landing page, which is here. And if I could ask anyone who's still on the call to complete the survey that we have at the end of each event, which I've just put in there. And of course, the talk is being recorded, as are most of the others in the series, and the future ones, they'll be added to the alumni team YouTube channel, which is there. And of course, all of this will be included in the follow-up email, which will go out tomorrow to everyone. So yeah, that just leaves me to say a huge thanks to you again, Yash, and to my colleagues, Saudamani, Brett and Tierney for moderating, and to Laura as well for her help. So rest up, Yash, and huge thanks. And yeah,
yes, thank you. And yeah,
and thanks for joining, I should say, of course.
Have a good evening, everyone.
To everyone else. But see you later. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.